fundamentally transformed the Justice Department and left an enormous stain in American history. It will take decades to recover. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would you please rise so I can give you swear? Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Please be seated and give us your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Durbin, and every member of this committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. First, please join me in remembering, as you said, Chairman Grassley, all the Jewish people who lost their lives in the October 7th attacks 2 years ago today. Also, please let's pray for all the hostages and the families of all of those individuals. They are a critical reminder of our central mission here at the Department of Justice, protecting the safety and security of the American people. That is why, even when the government is otherwise shut down because of the Democrats, the department's law enforcement officers and prosecutors are hard at work fighting crime, keeping our streets safe, and protecting you from the threats, foreign and domestic. When I was confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States, I took office with two main goals: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime. As to ending the weaponization of justice, we learned that former FBI secretly investigated you and your colleagues. Why? They wanted to take President Trump off the playing field. They were playing politics with law enforcement powers and will go down as a historic betrayal of public trust. This is the kind of conduct that shatters the American people's faith in our law enforcement system. We will work to earn that back every single day. We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime. While there is more work to do, I believe in 8 short months, we have made tremendous progress towards those ends. Our federal surges in Washington, D.C. and Memphis are a perfect example of how the Department of Justice should operate. We created strong partnerships with local leadership, working hand in hand with both cities to send resources where they were needed most. The results speak for themselves. We have made more than 3,800 arrests here in Washington while seizing more than 365 illegal guns. In Memphis, we have already made more than 300 arrests and close to 80 illegal guns in just a week. We are replicating that tough on crime approach throughout this country. Under the leadership of Director Kash Patel, the FBI is doing outstanding investigative work to keep American people safe. The FBI just conducted a months-long operation called Summer Heat, which resulted in over 8,600 arrests from June to September. More than 6,500 arrests fell under the FBI's violent crime and gang program. Under the leadership of Administrator Terry Cole, the DEA has seized 47.9 million fentanyl pills and 4,500 kilos of fentanyl powder. That represents 370 million deadly doses, 370 million. The DEA is dismantling violent cartel drug trafficking networks across this country, including the seizure of nearly 470 million in criminal assets. Under the leadership of Gadi Serralta, our U.S. Marshals have been the tip of the spear on federal surges and protecting judges and elected officials. Our Marshals have arrested more than 51,000 fugitives nationwide since January 20th. Under the leadership of Acting Director Dan Driscoll, ATF has taken more than 23,000 illegal guns off our streets. 3,400 of those guns have been linked to trafficking between the U.S. and Mexico. My attorneys have done incredible work advancing President Trump's agenda and protecting the executive branch from judicial overreach. We've been sued more than 400 times since January 20th. Judges have issued more than 90 temporary restraining orders against us, more than the previous several administrations combined. Despite the unprecedented degree of activism we've seen from the lower courts, we have never ignored a court order. And why would we? We have secured a historic 22 victories at the Supreme Court alone, with more to come. Our civil rights attorneys are fighting discrimination and anti-Semitism. Our criminal attorneys are prosecuting violent criminals and foreign terrorists every single day. I look forward to continuing this work at the Department of Justice, and I look forward to testifying before you today. Thank you, Chairman.
I forgot to turn on the microphone. Let me start over again. We have 10-minute rounds. I've asked Senator Blackburn to chair between 10:30 and 11. I hope that we can have good decorum during this hearing. Treat each other with respect. General Bondi, just in case you get cut off with something that you don't get to answer your question when that senator's done, if you ask me for a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to finish your answer, I'd be glad to give that to you. So starting myself, you inherited a bloated bureaucracy. It requires reorientation to better serve your mission of the department. That would include reassessing grants disguised to help Americans, but many were partisan pet projects. It also requires reallocation of resources to better serve the American people. On this issue, I've got two questions. What updates can you share with the committee about your review and grant DOJ and grants that DOJ has reassessed? Just give us some examples, don't I know?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. During my appearance at the department's budget hearings, I acknowledged that some grants were mistakenly terminated, and we have made a process to correct that. All grant termination appeals will be individually considered for alignment with our current policies, which are strengthening law enforcement and protecting victims. Recipients are given the opportunity to appeal a grant termination consistent with the rules by writing to the Assistant Attorney General. Of the 5,800 discretionary grants that were reviewed, only 376, approximately 7%, were terminated. So far, OJP has turned back on 18 awards, 17 appeals have been denied, and the rest are actively being reviewed, with decisions expected soon.
My colleagues on the other side claim that your department has reallocated resources to immigration enforcement and it's had a negative impact on law enforcement. We know that drugs and crimes are very much a part of immigration enforcement, so these attacks are clearly off the mark. Explain your view of these misguided assertions.
Chairman, every day our FBI, DEA, ATF, and now U.S. Marshals working on a task force with Homeland Security are out there keeping Americans safe and getting illegal aliens out of our country, many of whom have committed violent crimes in this country. Our agents will continue to fight violent crime in this country, working hand in hand. One example is right here in Washington, D.C. We have the D.C. Task Force that has been incredibly successful. We are so proud of the work that has done. We have been working hand in hand with the local officials here in D.C., and we are very proud of that work. And we're taking that to Tennessee and around this country to keep Americans safe.
I won't repeat the things I've said about Arctic frost, but we had this recent revelation yesterday of my Republican senators being targeted by the government, underscoring the point about Arctic frost. When taken in context with widespread government weaponization against Trump and conservatives in the last decade, the conduct's arguably is worse than Watergate. So I got two questions along this line. How many Department of Justice and FBI personnel have been held accountable for their partisan and constitutional questionable conduct, and what was their punishment? If you could give a few examples or follow up in writing, since there's so many people that fall into this category.
Yes, Senator. Yes, Chairman, we will.
So you want to answer that in writing? Yeah, okay.
Yes, the exact number I can answer in writing. Yes.
Okay. Was Attorney General, on the same subject, was Attorney General Garland, Director Wray, and/or President Biden's White House aware of the FBI targeting Republican senators? Did they approve it? Now, let's be clear. Either they knew and allowed it to happen, or they didn't know. And if they didn't know, it points to a lack of oversight of Jack Smith's runaway case.
Chairman Grassley, that's what we've been talking about when we refer to the weaponization of government. Operation Arctic Frost was an unconstitutional, undemocratic abuse of power. During Arctic Frost, the FBI also placed 92 linked Republican individuals and Republican groups, such as Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, on their list. This is the kind of conduct that shattered the American people's faith in our government, as I said in my opening statement. We are ending this weaponization. Our FBI is targeting violent criminals, child predators, and other lawbreakers, not sitting senators who happen to be from the wrong political party. Several of your colleagues sitting at this dais were targeted, and others. We will continue to stop that throughout the Justice Department. That is the ultimate weaponization of government.
Have you sought grand jury secrecy waivers so that all of Arctic Frost documents can be produced to Congress? And if not, do you plan to do that?
Chairman Grassley, I will be working directly with the Director Patel on this issue, and there's not much more we can say about the issue for obvious reasons at this time.
Okay. Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, PSOB, provides benefits to law enforcement and first responders if they're disabled or killed in the line of duty. Affected family members may also benefit. My oversight and a government accountability office report shows that some claims have taken thousands of days to conclude. PSOB applicants have also informed my office that they've been left in tears with disrespectful ways they've been treated by the government. Question number 1 and 2 in this area, but I'll start just with 1. What actions have been taken to hold DOJ officials accountable for their failures to manage the program and treat applicants with respect?
Chairman Grassley, as stated earlier, there have been many terminations from the Department of Justice, and we stand by all of those. Many of those are subject to active litigation. This Department of Justice will treat everyone with respect, and we will do everything in our power to help citizens of this country. Please reach out to us with any individual cases, and I will personally look at them for you, Chairman.
Okay. So if you'll provide that information, that was my second question. So now let's go on to regarding the initial FBI 1023 document that I made public last Congress. That document mentioned 1, text messages, 2, audio recordings, and 3, financial records that allegedly approved a bribery scheme with the Biden family and foreign interest. I asked Director Patel if his predecessors made any effort to determine whether these records existed. He answered no. What steps has the department taken to determine whether these records exist? One way or another, this matter ought to be put to rest.
Chairman Grassley, I know Director Patel is working hard on this with the members of the FBI.
Okay. So we don't know if these records exist, or you just can't say that publicly at this point?
I don't want to discuss any of that publicly,
Okay.
Director.
The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act includes a safeguard to prevent political weaponization. The reauthorization mandated certain members and their staffs shall be entitled to attend any proceedings of the FISA court. Former Biden DOJ Assistant Attorney General Matt Olson drafted a privacy agreement that allowed the department to hide information from Congress during FISA proceedings. Matt Olson made a career out of targeting President Trump and his allies, so it's not surprising that he would attempt to hinder congressional oversight or cover up for the Biden regime. I want to make sure that you get rid of the ridiculous and misguided Olson memo. When can you tell me that will be done?
We will notify you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, let me ask you this question. Were you consulted by the White House before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Ranking Member.
I noticed that. What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
Been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not they had a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility. She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops to my state. That's an indication, I'm afraid, where we are politically in this place. Let me ask you another question. I want to, if you will, hold on a second. Make sure I got the right page of facts here. You testified under oath when you last before this committee that before your appointment to Attorney General, you had served as a representative of some sort for the royal family of Qatar. There was an issue that came before you in May when President Trump accepted a $400 million luxury jet from the royal family of Qatar for temporary use as Air Force One before it's permanently gifted to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation. The Constitution unequivocally bestows on Congress the power to control whether any officer of the United States, including the president, may accept a gift, quote, from any king, prince, or foreign state, end of quote. And this gift clearly violates the statutory regime enacted by Congress. You've refused to answer a letter I sent to you 5 months ago, asking the legal rationale you relied on to advise President Trump to accept this unprecedented gift from your former legal client. Can you make a promise today that you will disclose that?
Disclose what, Ranking Member?
I assume there was a letter or some sort of statement from your office to the White House to advise them that you felt it was permissible?
First, to address my role with Qatar, as I addressed with you during my confirmation hearing, I disclosed it in my SJQ. In private practice, I worked for Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. That was my only involvement, And I made that very clear, and I'm very proud of everything I've done with anti-human trafficking. Obviously, in preparing any advice for the president on a jet or anything else, we consult with the Office of Legal Counsel. The confidentiality applies to their input as well. And Chairman, if you would approve and vote to approve, as Chairman Grassley said, excuse me, Ranking Member, as Chairman Grassley said, my employees, we would answer your letters a lot faster, yet you're stalling them at every stop. And to go back to your previous question, your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
I believe cutting federal grant programs to law enforcement in my state and across the nation does not make us any safer, and you've done just that. You've supplanted that decision by sending in National Guard troops to California and other places. That is a situation where the governors have not asked for that help. If you truly wanted to do this on a bipartisan basis, you wouldn't defy a governor, you would work with them. I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work with this administration. But cutting these grants to law enforcement does not make us any stronger as a nation or give us the tools we need to reduce crime in Chicago. Now, I'd just like to ask you, when it came to this Cutter situation, did you consult with the ethics office in the Department of Justice before making your decision on this gift of a jet?
Chairman, I didn't gift a jet to anyone. My Office of Legal Counsel provides confidential advice to the president, to the White House, period. And you're conflating two issues. Cutting grants, I was very clear about what grants we've cut and what grants we haven't, only 7%. And if you have a grant in Illinois that you think that I've cut that is protecting law enforcement officers or your people, you personally call me and I will work with you to turn that grant back on. I think many of the Democrats here can tell you, I have worked with them to turn grants back on. There's an appeal process. Tell me a specific grant that I have turned off in Illinois that would help law enforcement, and I will work with you. But you have not done that.
Did you
And
take
again,
a look?
the National Guard is on the way right now as we speak. Oh, by the way, so is Director Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. You're sitting here grilling me, and they're on their way to Chicago to keep your state safe.
Madam Attorney General, it's my job to grill you. Investigation of your agency is part of my responsibility and this committee. You may not like the experience, but others have weathered the storm and answered questions in a respectful manner.
Can you tell me the grants,
Yes.
Ranking Member, please?
Take a look at the president's budget on HIDA grants. What happens to it in his proposed budget?
I'd be glad to meet with you on the
It's
grants.
cut by 1/3 from $300 million to 196. That's one example of a grant that works, and your administration has suggested cutting it in the budget lies ahead. I want to ask you about items in a letter I sent you in July that you have not answered. In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review, end of quote. You then produced already public information and no client list at a major media event hosted at the White House. Attorney General Bondi, why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files. And I said I had not yet reviewed it. And if you see our memo on Epstein, you will see, excuse me, our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list, our July 6th memo. You also didn't let me respond to the HIDA question. The budget transfers $196 million for high-intensity drug trafficking areas to the Office of Justice Programs, OJP. The Justice Department will continue to administer those grants under OJP in 2026.
Going back to the Epstein files, according to another whistleblower who made a protected disclosure to my office. You pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July, when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memo stating, quote, "There's no incriminating client list." Why was the July 7th memo unsigned?
The July 7th memo came from the FBI and the Department of Justice. Director Patel answered those questions very clear. And, you know, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations,
Never
who was
heard-
a huge Epstein friend? Why did you fight for years? Why did you fight to not disclose the flight logs, Senator Durbin?
I can tell you I did not refuse. One of the senators here wished to produce those logs, and I asked her to put it in writing, and she never did.
Yeah, I think Senator Blackburn would quarrel with you on that. But
I
that's
will
up to the
quarrel
two
with
of
you as to read somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. And you won't do it today, but eventually you will. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I got to
Mr.
interject
Chairman?
something here.
Mr.
before I get
Chairman.
to him.
Mr. Chairman, since Senator Durbin referred to me, I would really appreciate the opportunity to correct the record,
Proceed.
because Senator Durbin knows I repeatedly asked for those flight logs. I brought up the subpoena. You even shut down the committee because you didn't want that, and you know I submitted that in writing, and you continue to misrepresent that, and I am not going to let that record stand.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Senator Durbin.
I just want to make it clear that the reason the committee business ended was that your side invoked the 2-hour rule. Point number 2 is I asked you if you wanted any documents like flight logs to put it in writing. You never did.
Yes, sir, I did, and your staff knows that I did.
No,
We'll submit once again
Send me a copy.
the information to you. We've done that several times, but we'll be happy to once again send it to you. I think your staff doesn't show that to you.
Well, as I started to say about the emolument clause and Democrats bringing that up in regard to Qatar, back in March of 2016, they didn't care anything about my bringing up the emolument clause in regard. I wrote to the Obama Justice Department. That letter was based on Secretary Clinton's 2009 to 2013 financial disclosures when she was Secretary of State. Those disclosures showed that her husband participated in at least 62 events with foreign states. Some of those were speaking events with connections to foreign governments, and some speaking events were financially supported by foreign governments. 2 examples, Bill Clinton received hundreds of thousands of dollars for appearance sponsored by Middle Eastern governments. Bill Clinton also received $200,000 for a speech connected to the Chinese government. And I don't recall getting any help from my Democrat colleagues on that investigation. Senator Graham.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. So I want to make sure I got this clear. If a Democrat or a Republican senator has a problem with a grant that's been canceled or reduced, you would be glad to talk to them.
Yes, Senator, and I have been doing that as well.
There have been Democratic members who called you
They have spoken to my office, yes, Senator,
and you've tried to respond.
on either side of course, if it has anything to do with law
So-
enforcement or victims,
And that includes Senator Durbin. If he's got a problem, he can call you and you'll try to respond.
absolutely.
Thank you. How many illegal immigrants are in Chicago?
Ooh.
Does anybody know?
I do, countless. What we have seen since January 20th Senator Graham, is a 1,000% increase in violent attacks against our ICE officers.
Right. But I just want to know, is there like 10 or 100,000? Does anybody know?
There have been multiple, and we have made multiple arrests, of course, involving violent gangs
Yeah.
in Chicago,
Right.
throughout Illinois.
Right. So the only reason I ask that is Chicago is sanctuary city. Do they help ICE deal with illegal immigration, or their sanctuary city? Do you know?
They are not cooperating, and I would ask that, I wish Senator Durbin would condemn the governor for not cooperating with our law enforcement officers.
The only reason I mention this, if you're a sanctuary city, any place in the country, you're making it difficult for the rest of us. Because word gets out, if you get to a certain city, maybe Chicago being one of them, that you're home free, and that just encourages more illegal immigration. Do you deal with that? Do I agree with that?
I do, Senator Graham, and can I add something to that?
Sure.
Please. One of our biggest wins was against the Sinaloa cartel, and that came in Chicago. The state of Illinois has a trust act, which prevents local law enforcement from cooperating with our federal immigration authorities. And that's what I was trying to talk to Senator Durbin about. On September 15th, our partners at ICE arrested an illegal alien from Mexico for beating a 21-year-old man to death. He had been imprisoned in Illinois prior to the murder and was released under Illinois' Trust Act. We filed multiple lawsuits in Illinois for sanctuary policies, specifically in-state tuition for illegal aliens and obstructing employers from verifying citizenship. You can't make this up. On September 5th, a federal grand jury in Chicago indicted a major Sinaloa cartel boss, narco-terrorism, guns, and drug charges. On July 11th, we announced a guilty plea for Ovidio Guzman Lopez. You may know him as the son of El Chapo, one of the worst narco-terrorists in the world. In the world,
In
senators.
Chicago.
In Chicago. In Chicago. He entered a guilty plea to drug conspiracy and 2 counts of knowingly engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise in the state of Illinois. I could continue with fentanyl. I could continue with child predators in Illinois.
Well, thank you. I think I've seen numbers over 100,000. So Chicago and other sanctuary cities, you're making it harder for us to deal with illegal immigration by doing what you're doing. And I am glad President Trump is trying to change those policies. And if you need the National Guard to bring order out of chaos, so be it from my point of view. Now, let's get back to the topic sort of at hand here about how the law is being used politically. In September 2022, Attorney General James from New York basically said in a campaign that she would go after Trump, his business transactions, and his family with full force. November the 15th, 2022, Trump announces his candidacy for president. November 2022, 3 days after Trump announced his reelection campaign, Jack Smith was appointed by Garland to be special counsel to look at classified information, document mishandling, and trying to undermine the 2020 election. In March, President Trump was indicted in Manhattan of 2023, just after announcing 34 felony counts. And what they did is they took misdemeanors and turned them into felonies by using a legal theory that no one in the history of Manhattan had ever been charged with. June 2023, a federal grand jury in the District Court for the Southern District of Florida indicted President Trump on 37 charges regarding classified information. Now, all I can say is that taking a hammer to a hard drive and bleach bit apparently doesn't make the cut. Having documents in the garage of President Biden doesn't make the cut. In August of 2023, he was indicted yet again regarding the 2020 election. So all I can say is that in September 27th, Jack Smith's team asked for my phone records and 7 other senators. Now, that's just the 2024 election. Comey, are you aware of the fact that in August, Comey, then director FBI, August of 2016, was in a meeting at the White House where it was discussed that by Brennan, then CIA director, that there was intelligence that maybe the Clinton campaign was trying to cook up a narrative that Trump was a Russian asset?
Senator, I believe that has been reported publicly, but I cannot
Well,
comment on that.
okay, well, I'm just telling you. Now, this is a campaign for president in 2016. In July, they open up Crossfire Hurricane. In August, they have a discussion in front of President Biden that there's intel that maybe this is generated by his political opponent. Nothing happened. In September, are you aware of the fact that the intelligence community sent a memo to the FBI director detailing intelligence that suggests it's Clinton's campaign is behind the idea that Trump is colluding or cooperating with the Russians?
Senator, I believe that has been reported.
And that was addressed to the FBI director and Mr. Strzok, this memo. Are you aware that he told this committee, I don't recall that, the FBI director?
Senator, I can't discuss anything.
Well, I can tell you this. What the hell would you recall? You're the sitting FBI director. There's a campaign for president going on. You've opened up an investigation believing that the Republican candidate may be a Russian asset. And now all of a sudden, less than a month later, 2 months later, you have 2 inquiries, 2 events to suggest it may be his political opponent. Did anybody in the FBI inform the FISA court or anyone else about this activity that you know of?
I can't discuss that matter, as you know, Senator Graham.
Should they have? Is there a requirement by law enforcement to tell the court if their warrant is being sought or a defendant that there's exculpatory information out there about you?
In general, of course, Senator.
So to the country, the FBI director gets a memo from the intel community. This may be all a political plot by his opponent. They didn't do a damn thing. Are you familiar with the Steele dossier?
Yes, Senator.
That was a dossier prepared and paid for by the Clinton campaign. Are you aware that it was that document was used to get a warrant on 5 different occasions against Carter Page, an American citizen?
Yes, Senator, and that has been
Are you
reported.
aware of the fact in February 2017, after Trump is president, the person who gave Christopher Steele the information, the Russian guy, told the FBI the information I provided you was all bar talk, hearsay, and not reliable? Are you aware of that?
Yes, Senator.
Was there ever an effort by the FBI to tell the FISA court about evidence that the man who helped prepare the document retracted his statement?
I can't discuss that, Senator.
Should there have been?
Can't discuss that.
You wonder
ongoing.
why we're looking at Comey? Give me a break. Why are we looking at Comey? Because he ran an FBI and personally knew about exculpatory information and let it slide. How in the hell can 2 FBI agents interview a man who says the document you're using against a sitting president to suggest he may be a Russian agent or Carter Page that is now no longer reliable? How does that not get to the court? Can you tell me how that doesn't get to the court? You can't, can you?
I can't, Senator, and I
Can
can't
you tell me
discuss it.
why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
Do you think that was an abuse of power?
Senator, I cannot discuss whether there is or is not an ongoing investigation. If I may add one thing, they also wasted $50 million on what you just described, trying to put President Trump in jail prior to the election.
Before Senator Whitehouse, I want to introduce into the record what is called the Durham Annex. The annex is a declassified appendix to John Durham's report about Crossfire Hurricane. The Durham Annex contains information exposing a reported Clinton campaign plan to falsify and tie President Trump to Russia. For years, I've fought to assemble and publicize all the facts surrounding Durham investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, and related matters. The Durham Annex was declassified as a large part because of Attorney General Bondi.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
If I can answer it, yes. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Are you going to hold a separate hearing on your whistleblower account of the FBI investigation of 8 United States senators?
I think we need, my answer to your question is, I think we need to wait until we see what the FBI can report and whether it's necessary to have a hearing. Right now, I haven't ruled one out, but I haven't made a decision.
And what year do you think that will happen in?
I want the FBI to be a thorough investigation of it and report to us what information they can give us. And I don't know how long that'll take them.
With respect, are you giving them a certain period of time?
I have not given them a certain period of time. I'll discuss that matter with my staff and see if that needs to be done.
Okay, if civil suits are filed against the perpetrators at the FBI, will that facilitate your investigation?
Well, what's the question again?
If the 8 senators who were spied upon sue the hell out of the Department of Justice and the perpetrators involved, will that facilitate their investigation and or yours? I guess what I'm getting to is, I don't understand why we don't have a separate hearing. I find this breathtaking.
It's just been 24 hours since the FBI investigated on it. Please give me an opportunity to sort through all this.
Fair enough. I just don't want to wait 24 years to get an answer.
Yeah. We do have an active investigation going on through my staff. I want to make that very clear. Mr. Whitehouse, or Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Bondi, good morning.
Good morning.
What became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI paid to Mr. Homan in a paper bag, evidently?
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
And that was not my question. My question was, what became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI delivered, evidently in a paper bag, to Mr. Homan?
Senator, I'd look at your facts.
Are you saying that they did not deliver $50,000 in cash to Mr. Homan?
Senator, as recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full
A different
review
question.
by the FBI agents,
That's a
by
different
Department
question.
of Justice prosecutors. They found no evidence of wrongdoing.
That's a different question. What became of the $50,000? Did the FBI get it back?
Mr. Whitehouse, excuse me, Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to talk to the FBI.
The report to you, can't you answer this question?
Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to discuss this with Director Patel.
Did Homan keep the $50,000?
As Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the
Okay,
investigation
never
of
mind.
Mr.
Never mind.
Homan
I can
was
see I'm not going to get a
a
straight
full
answer from you to
review
a very
by
simple
the
question.
FBI agents and the DOJ.
Do
They
you
found
know?
no credible evidence of wrongdoing. You know, you're very concerned about money and people taking money, and
Do
you
you
rail
know, wait a
against dark
second, wait a
money.
second, wait a
Yet you
second.
work with
wait
dark
a
money
second,
groups all the time,
Wait
Senator
a second.
Whitehouse.
Did you know whether or not in that investigation they looked at whether the 2024 $50,000 payment to Mr. Homan was declared by him on his tax returns?
Senator, I would be more concerned if I were you when you talk about corruption and money, that when you pushed for legislation that would subsidize your wife's company.
The questions here are actually pretty specific. So having you respond with completely irrelevant far-right internet talking points really is not very helpful here. I'd like, Mr. Chairman, you generally like to have us be able to get answers to know, and we'll follow up with the QFR. And to the extent Patel wants to answer, that would be great as well. What happened to the $50,000? Did Homan keep it? Did the FBI get it back? If he kept it, did he put it on his tax returns? Pretty simple questions. Homan was the same guy who said there was a deal with Eric Adams. He said, if Adams doesn't come through, I'll be back. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? Which brings us to the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee, because he was also involved in that transaction.
Yeah.
What became of the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee?
Yeah, Senator Whitehouse, to correct you for one moment, that would be the Honorable Judge Emil J. Bovee III to you.
Not at the time of this. He was an employee of the Department of Justice. And what became of the OPR investigation?
It's
into
all
his
pending litigation,
misconduct?
Senator. I can't discuss pending litigation nor personnel matters.
OPR customarily publicly says when there's an investigation, and at the end of it, they provide a summary. Why can't you say whether there's an OPR investigation and whether, if it's concluded, there's a summary?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters.
Even public ones.
Senator, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters.
So Kash Patel told this committee that his grand jury testimony after immunization, after initially pleading the fifth, was, and I quote, sealed by the Department of Justice. How and when and why was his testimony sealed, and by whom?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss any testimony, especially testimony that could be sealed with you.
No, the question is, was it or was it not sealed?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss that with you.
Well, he also said that he worked with the Department of Justice to have his transcript released publicly. How and when was his transcript released? Presumably, if he released it publicly, that's something you can discuss because it's public.
Well, Senator, I believe you discussed that with Director Patel.
And I'm asking you because he said the Department of Justice made this decision and you run the Department of Justice.
I would refer that to Director Patel.
Even though you run the Department of Justice and he testified that the Department of Justice released his transcript publicly.
If it is released publicly, we will get you a copy, Senator, gladly.
If being a rather important word there, when your FBI director testified that that was a fact. Treasury compiles suspicious activity reports, referred to often as SARs, that DOJ receives automatically. Hundreds related to accounts of Jeffrey Epstein. How many of those Treasury SARs did you or Director Patel investigate?
Senator, I'm not sure if you're concerned because you took money, I believe, did you, from Reid Hoffman, one of Epstein's closest confidants, not only once, but twice in 2018 and 2024, if that's correct. But Senator, Did you ask Merrick Garland any of this over the last 4 years when he sat before you?
Why
This
don't,
investigation has
I
been
ask
going
you?
on. This investigation was closed. Did you ask Alex
when
Acosta
you
that?
and Patel came to office, you said you would look into this. There were hundreds of suspicious activity reports. Some people would deduce from the fact that they are called suspicious activity reports that there might be suspicious activity. And yet you seem to have looked at 0 of those suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein accounts. Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're
So-
grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that? Okay. Here's what well, no, we cut to something else. The Marshal Service is supposed to protect our federal judges. I have asked repeatedly for the Marshal Service to let me know if they are investigating or being inhibited from investigating whether or not there is orchestration of threats against federal judges, whether under either conspiracy laws or racketeering enterprise laws or aiding and abetting laws, whatever. But as you know, there's the person who says the threat, and then there may very well be somebody orchestrating the threat behind them. Is the Marshal Service allowed to investigate orchestration of threats? And do you know if they've taken one step to do so?
May I answer the question, Chairman Grassley? The time has expired.
I think it's the convention of the committee that if I've started my question in my time, you may answer the
I was
question.
asking the chairman.
Okay, before I go to Cornyn.
She wants to answer the question, Chairman.
Oh, please go ahead. I thought you said you didn't want to answer it. I'm
Yes, sir.
sorry.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse, I would be happy to sit down with you regarding any threat to any federal judge in this country. We take threats very seriously. I will set a meeting with you, with Director Seralta of the U.S. Marshals, and I will be there. And we will talk about any threats on federal judges,
Including
who
orchestration.
threatened them or who orchestrated them.
Bingo, thank you.
Before Cornyn speaks, I get kind of amused about my Democratic colleagues bringing up Treasury suspicious activity reports regarding Epstein. When Senator Johnson and I issued our Biden family reports in 2020, we used information from these very same type of documents. And you know what? We were criticized by our Democratic colleagues for doing so. And for years, they ignored the evidence of the Biden family criminality. I don't think my colleagues can have it both ways. Senator Cornyn.
General Bondi, 6 out of 10 Americans say they live from paycheck to paycheck. And I'm sure that includes a lot of federal employees, Border Patrol, FBI agents, people who support them, frontline prosecutors. Do you find it somewhat inconsistent that our Democratic colleagues claim to support law enforcement and the rule of law, but yet they vote to deny those same individuals the pay which they've earned?
Yes, Senators, our law enforcement agencies, DEA, ATF, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and all the other federal agencies, Homeland Security, Treasury, all the agencies, all of my federal prosecutors, all of our employees are working tirelessly, national security, around the clock to keep this country safe and to keep this world safe. Yet, the Democrats voted to shut the government down, and they are out there working without a paycheck, with families at home, risking their lives every single day. Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for caring, Senator Cornyn.
So let's get back to some basics. The Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Applies to all Americans, the entire country. Federal law, likewise, applies to the entire nation, does it not?
Yes, Senator.
And so when federal law enforcement agents go to cities like Chicago to enforce federal law, they are acting within their authority, are they not?
Yes, Senator Cornyn.
So on what legal basis would a governor or a mayor say, we're going to deny or prevent a federal law enforcement agent from enforcing federal law? What would be the legal basis for them to do that?
You know, Senator, there's not one. And as I stated, there were 571 homicides in Chicago last year. And that's why right now, Director Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche are on their way to Chicago. I've been to Memphis. They're in Chicago right now to protect the people of Illinois. And what Senator Graham, the point he was trying to make earlier, was that when you don't cooperate with law enforcement, if I was a TDA member, if I was a Sinaloa cartel narco terrorist, you know where I'd go? Chicago, because they're not enforcing the law. And they're running their operations, as I stated earlier, two of the biggest terrorists, narco terrorists, we arrested right in Chicago because it was a safe haven for them. And they're operating these networks around our entire country. So we are going to keep our entire country safe. We're going to protect all Americans. If these senators aren't going to vote to open our government, to let these people, our people, work with paychecks, they're going to do it anyway, whether or not the locals are cooperating with them. We're going to be there protecting all Americans in this country, Senator Cornyn.
I find it, the comparison between the nation's Washington, D.C., here in the nation's capital, where the mayor has welcomed the federal law enforcement agents, which as I travel around the city, are providing a level of deterrence against crime that I have not seen before. And Washington, D.C. happens to be one of the most dangerous metropolitan areas in the country. So seeing what the response has been by local officials here in Washington, D.C., seeing how the public here who visits here as tourists from Texas and elsewhere, how they're welcoming this federal law enforcement presence, it strikes me as a stark contrast between what we've seen in places like Chicago. And I just don't understand how elected officials who are sworn to uphold the law and the Constitution of the United States could take the position that, no, we don't want a safer community in our major cities that have a high level of crime like Chicago. Doesn't it strike you as bizarre?
Senator Cornyn, I don't understand it either, because we've been working hand in hand right here in DC with Mayor Bowser. She has been an incredible partner at making DC safe again. We've been working with her. We've been working with the police chief. We've been working with their staff, and the numbers speak for themselves. 3,156 arrests, 294 illegal guns seized. I think the number's probably higher today. carjackings down 87%, violent crime down 45%. Right here in the nation's capital. I have been out there countless times before they go out on the streets, and I'm watching the DC Metro Police. I'm watching them with the Transit Authority Police, who of course keep our metros safe. I'm watching them with our DEA, FBI, ATF, US Marshals, Treasury agents, and HHS has even provided doctors out there to help the team. And what they are, they're a team, and they are working hand in hand. If you couldn't see their shirts on their insignia, you wouldn't know what agency they were with. I've truly never seen a partnership like that in my career, and it's working together. And that's what Illinois is refusing to do. And I wish these senators, I wish Senator Durbin would condemn the governor of Illinois and have him work with us like we're doing now in Memphis. We have the governor of Memphis. We have our two great U.S. senators in Memphis. We have the mayor of Memphis, the same, the chief, working hand in hand there.
Last week, maybe the week before last, I lose track of the days, we had the head of the Metropolitan Police Union for the District of Columbia here, and I asked him about violent crime in our communities. And I asked him whether there was a straight line from the open border policies of the Biden administration, which helped facilitate the cartels from exporting their poison to the United States, only to then find it distributed by criminal gangs who then engage in violence in our communities like Chicago to protect their territory and the profits that go along with that illegal drug trafficking. But I want to ask you about another aspect of the open border policies, and that has to do with one of the least reported tragedies and scandals associated with the Biden open border policies, and that has to do with the 500,000 children, sometimes called unaccompanied children, UACs, 500,000 children that the Biden administration allowed to be placed with sponsors in this country that were largely unvetted and subjecting them to who knows what, and then abandoning them by taking the position that it's not the federal government's responsibility, it's local child protective agencies that have to follow up on these kids. So they couldn't tell you whether they were being trafficked, recruited into gangs, whether they were going to school, whether they were getting the health care that they need. They couldn't tell you because they didn't care. So I know that President Trump's administration, the Department of Justice in particular, has located 22,000 of these 500,000 children. Could you talk to us a little bit about your efforts to rescue these children that had been abandoned by the Biden administration?
Yes, and Senator, thank you for asking that question. President Trump cares deeply about our children of this country and children from around the world. This is horrific what has been happening in our country. Law enforcement has arrested approximately 458 sponsors. Now, what these sponsors are, they lie to ORR, many of them, to have an unaccompanied alien child. Some of them later exploit and abuse these children. They're not parents, they're not guardians. They're coming into this country, they were coming into this country without any ramification across the Mexican border until Donald Trump became president again, and that's when it stopped. We are doing everything in our power to find and arrest these people who are exploiting these children and find these children throughout our country. One of those cases, we charged a Guatemalan national unlawfully residing in Cleveland with lying to government because he became the sponsor of a young girl. And of course, we found he was later sexually abusing her. That's one of many cases, Senator Cornyn, that I can talk about. And Donald Trump will not rest until all of these sponsors are found and these children are found and protected.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar, you're recognized.
Thank you. Attorney General Bondi, good morning. I'm going to start on a different subject.
Good morning.
On behalf of families in my state. And I wanted to thank the FBI and the local justice officials in Minnesota, the U.S. Attorney's Office, for the work that they did catching the murder, in the horrific murder of my friend, Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband, and the shooting of Senator John Hoffman. Just last month, my state was again shaken to its core when a mass shooter attacked Annunciation Catholic Church in Minnesota, shooting through the stained glass windows, injuring 21 people, including 18 kids, killing little Fletcher, little Harper, an 8 and a 10-year-old, murdering them when they're in mass praying, 12-year-olds protecting 8-year-olds. I know we've spoken about these tragedies, and we both agree that this kind of violence, whether in Minnesota or at a Mormon church in Michigan or the assassination of Charlie Kirk, has no place in our politics or in our democracy. In 2018, after the Parkland shooting, you were Attorney General, and there was a bill called the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. And the bill banned bump stocks, enacted red flag laws, and raised the minimum age to purchase a firearm in Florida from 18 to 21. And you actually defended the law in court from a challenge from the NRA. And we know that I'm in favor of an assault weapon ban, period. I look at these bills and I think, does this hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand? We have a proud tradition of hunting in Minnesota. I don't think they do. But as I talked to Director Patel, and he told me in the chair you are sitting in right now, that assault weapon bans could prevent future attacks. I talked to him about better background checks, about red flag laws, and then that perhaps we could find common ground on what actually happened in Florida, which would be to at least change the minimum age for purchasing assault weapon, because we've got 18 to 20-year-olds commit gun homicides at over triple the rate of adults 21 years and over, even though that wouldn't helped in Annunciation Church because he was a few years older. She was a few years older. But as you know, the shooter at Parkland was 19 years old, and the shooters in Buffalo and Uvalde were both 18 years old. So given your efforts in Florida, do you agree that at least raising the age for purchasing assault weapons could reduce the number of these shootings?
Senator, first, that's pending litigation, and I can't discuss that at all. The
But is-
21 is pending litigation. I cannot discuss
In
that.
Florida?
But if I could go back to
I really
the
didn't know
21
this.
age is pending litigation. I can't discuss that. But Senator, back to what you said about what happened in Minnesota, there is no place for that. And I believe I spoke to you after that horrific,
Okay.
those murders. And I'm so sorry that happened. And all of my federal agencies were partnering with state agencies, working hand in hand in Minnesota. What I can tell you about the Second Amendment is this is the most pro-Second Amendment DOJ in American history, as you know. But we want to keep guns, as you said, where they should be, in the hands of law-abiding American citizens, while keeping them out of the hands of criminals and gangs. Since January 20th, the ATF and FBI have seized more than
you gave these statistics.
30,000
I really
illegal
was,
guns.
I have 10 minutes. and I-
30,000.
You have given
Senator
these
Klobuchar.
statistics, and I truly appreciate those statistics. But what I was just trying to get at was something where maybe we could find common ground on a bill that you actually defended in court in a state, which Director Patel seemed open to, and that was looking at, could we at least raise the age to 21 of the purchase of an assault weapon federally, while states look at banning these weapons overall, given these little babies that this gun is used to kill. So we can talk about it later, but that was my question, and you don't want to answer it. 'cause
No,
of-
it's pending litigation,
Okay,
Senator.
but your views on this is not pending litigation. So I want to get to the independence of the Justice Department. At your nomination hearing, I specifically asked you to provide assurance to every member of this committee that the Justice Department will only follow the facts and the law, and the White House will play no role in the cases investigated or brought. You stated in response, this was you, politics will not play a part in my decisions. And you also said the Justice Department must be independent and must act independently. Do you believe that you have upheld that commitment?
I absolutely have upheld that commitment, Senator. I pledged that I would end the weaponization also of the Justice Department, and that America would once again have a one-tier system of justice for all. And that is what we are doing in this country.
We saw this with the president directing an investigation prosecution of Chris Krebs, the former head of cybersecurity, Lisa Cook, who is the current governor of the Federal Reserve, Director Comey. And the president, and I know you have said that you will not discuss discussions you've had with the president about Comey. Is that correct? That you won't testify here about that? Because I was going to ask you if you received advice, instruction, or request from anyone at the White House to direct the department to engage in any investigations, prosecutorial actions, including decisions not to investigate or prosecute anyone.
I'm not going to discuss any
Okay.
conversations.
But then how about the Truth Social post on September 20th, 2025, in which the president said, "We can't delay any longer, Pam," using your name, "not bringing criminal charges are killing our reputation," his words, "and credibility." And then goes on to tell you to prosecute a member of this committee, to prosecute the Attorney General of New York, and to prosecute James Comer. Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?
Senator Klobuchar, President Trump is the most transparent president in American history. And I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
Okay, it has been reported that you initially pushed back against requests by senior Trump administration officials to push out or fire the acting U.S. Attorney in Virginia, Eric Siebert, who's a conservative Republican, who made the decision that the evidence was not there to prosecute Comey. What made you change your opinion?
I am not going to discuss personnel decisions.
Okay. Is it true that the career prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia found that there was insufficient evidence to bring criminal charges against former Director Comey?
I am not going to discuss pending cases because Comey was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia by, I may point out, one of the most liberal grand juries in the country.
Okay, let's go on to other firings or terminations. Last week, the Justice Department fired at least 2 senior attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, including the office's national security chief, Michael Benary. It is reported that his firing came following criticism from a right-wing social media commentator who wrote, "One can only assume he was part of the internal resistance in the Comey indictment." In fact, he did not work on the Comey case. Instead, he was working on pursuing justice for service members killed in Afghanistan. How does firing a 20-year national security prosecutor enhance public safety?
Senator Klobuchar, I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions, but the personnel issue that I'm having right now is that all of my agents, all of my lawyers are working. My agents are on the street working without a paycheck because your party voted to shut down the federal government.
Unfortunately, the House isn't even back here. They're 18 days off the job to even meet with us to come up with a resolution that we would like to discuss with them about saving people's health care. Let's move on to the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize your chief of staff to overrule top officials in the Antitrust Division to settle the challenge to the Hewlett-Packard Enterprises Juniper Networks merger?
Senator Gail Slater runs my antitrust unit, and she is doing an excellent job on many, many cases. As you know, that is a pending case.
Okay.
In any merger, just to clarify, in any merger, Senator, there is a deal struck with our office and with the corporations involved, but then that also goes to a court to certify in any merger. It's a multi-step process.
Okay, I
And
will
that
ask some
process is
further
still pending,
questions
Senator
about
Klobuchar.
antitrust. I just had one other thing. DOJ can now take the extraordinary step of
Time's
subpoenaing
expired.
journalists. Has the Justice Department issued any subpoenas to journalists under the updated guidance?
Time is expired.
Okay, I'll ask
You
those
may
on the record.
respond, Ms. Bondi.
You can respond, she said.
Senator, my office in April restored the Justice Department's longstanding norm on this issue. It was AG Garland who had deviated on the media investigations policy, allowing self-identified journalists using this self-serving status as a shield against being held accountable for endangering our nation's security. We have taken that policy back to the norm, and I can't comment on whether we have or have not, or do not have pending investigations.
Time
Senator
is
Klobuchar.
expired. Senator Lee, you're recognized.
Attorney General Bondi, thank you for being here today, and thanks for your service as Attorney General of the United States. I want to start by thanking you for acknowledging a moment ago the importance of protecting the rights of the law-abiding. In a country where there are hundreds of millions of guns, one of the most alarming, not to mention unconstitutional things the government could do is to disarm the law-abiding. It would be unfair, it would be fatal to many, it would be contrary to our constitutional system. I appreciate you standing up for that. I'm also grateful for you standing up for Gail Slater, the Assistant Attorney General over the Antitrust Division. I have full confidence in her, and I can tell you do as well. More broadly, Attorney General Bondi, through your leadership, you've returned the Department of Justice to its core mission. And its core mission, of course, involves protecting the American people, upholding the law, upholding the Constitution, and making sure that justice in our system is applied even-handedly, fairly, consistently, as the law requires, without fear, favor, or political bias making those decisions. With you as Attorney General at the helm of this great department, the Department of Justice has strengthened its efforts to secure our borders against what has been an unprecedented influx of illegal immigration. It's disrupted sophisticated networks of criminals, including people who profit immensely and have profited over the last 5 years, roughly, from a massive human trafficking and drug smuggling operation. And it also just demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the safety of American citizens. Your work has sent a clear message to criminal organizations and to criminally minded people everywhere, foreign and domestic. The rule of law in the United States will be enforced, and those who prey on the vulnerable will face especially swift and unpleasant consequences. I'd also like to commend you and FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino for your collaboration with state and local law enforcement in my home state of Utah in assisting with the prompt apprehension of the shooter in the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk just a few weeks ago at Utah Valley University. Your leadership has helped reaffirm that the Department of Justice exists to preserve the rule of law, to protect the peace, the safety of the American people, and ensure that our constitutional republic endures for many generations to come. Now, due to the open border policies that we had in the previous administration, a number of individuals, a number that is unknown and unknowable, but that is estimated to be in the many millions, somewhat estimated at the low end, be in the 10 million range. Others say more like 15. Others say it's more than that. But this unknown and unknowable number of individuals came across our border illegally. And an unknown number or percentage of those people are individuals who pose significant security risks, including some who were suspected terrorists. They were all allowed to enter the United States without proper vetting, in many cases without any vetting at all. What progress have you made so far, Attorney General Bondi, in solving some of those issues related to the illegal immigration of an estimated 10, 15 million, maybe more over the last 4 years?
Senator Lee, we are working hand in hand with Kristi Noem, of course, the Director of Homeland Security. She has been doing an incredible job. All of our agencies are working in partnership with them at the direction of President Trump. He ran on the promise of making America safe and closing our borders. And that's what he did on day one. He has also declared many of these transnational gangs as terrorist organizations, which is exactly what they are. They have been coming into our country from Mexico, from Venezuela, from other countries. They have been setting up shop right in our country. They are narco terrorists, and it is going to stop, and it is stopping under his watch. Our task forces are working hand in hand with Homeland Security. Director Patel, Deputy Director Bongino have been going non-stop to make America safe again. That's not just a slogan. That's protecting everyone in this room. That's what we're doing as a country. We don't care if you live in Chicago. We don't care if you live in Florida. We don't care if you live in Utah. President Trump wants everyone to be safe, including right here in Washington, D.C. And that's what he's been doing. Not only that, Senator Lee, the surge of drugs in this country has been horrific over the last 4 years. DEA they have seized 4,500 kilos of fentanyl powder and 50 million fentanyl pills, which I said earlier represents 370 million deadly doses of fentanyl. These transnational gangs, it's all about drugs and money, and they are destroying our country. They are destroying our children, and a lot of this fentanyl, as we know, is made, the precursors in China. They're coming in our country through Mexico and now other places, and under Donald Trump, it's going to stop because he has secured our borders, Senator Lee.
And we're very grateful for that effort. It's interesting to note, moreover, that under the leadership of your predecessor, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and others who routinely appear before this committee, when asked about the human smuggling operation going on across our southern border, routinely denied that fentanyl was coming in significant quantities through the human trafficking operation. They stated never with any evidence, never with any ability to back it up, to prove this was the case, that these things were coming across the points of entry through vehicles, through trucks, and otherwise. We know that not to be true, and we appreciate your work in exposing that. Now, in recent months, going along with this law enforcement effort, there's been a disturbing trend. It's a disturbing trend that seems to be on the increase in recent days and weeks. That is a rise of violence directed at federal law enforcement officers engaged in immigration-related arrests, including direct physical threats, organized riots outside of detention facilities, and most tragically, of late, a fatal shooting targeting an ICE facility in Dallas. Then just yesterday, it was reported that a cartel member in Chicago put a bounty, that's right, a bounty, out there offering $2,000 on information about any ICE officer and $10,000 for those who kill an ICE officer. Now, keep in mind, this information is not for kicks and giggles. It is not for a game of Trivial Pursuit. That information for which the cartel member would pay $2,000 is there so that others can kill an ICE officer and get $10,000. That's what that is. Can you discuss what protections are essential to ensuring the safety of ICE officers and their families, and why requirements to display personal information and prohibiting them from ever wearing any kind of covering would represent a totally unacceptable, indefensible risk to their public safety?
Senator Lee, our federal agents have been doxxed, and many of you know what that means. It has happened to you on both sides of the aisle. Our federal agents' lives have been threatened. We fought well, we spoke with Apple and Google to get the ICE Block app taken down. That was reckless and criminal in that people were posting where ICE officers lived. We worked with both Apple and Google to take that down. Threatening
It's
the
stunning, I
lives.
would add here, that it took as much work as it did by you to get them to take that down. Remember, in the days following January 6th, they took down all kinds of things, including a social media app called Parler, based on very thin evidence that was later largely rebutted, suggesting that people had been manipulating Parler in order to plan the January 6th attack. That wasn't true, and they took it down. I'm glad they have taken this Block ICE app down, but it's a shame that it took as long as it did, and as much work on your part to get them to take it down.
I will tell you they were cooperative, and to correct myself, it was where they were going, the jobs they were doing. And that's what's been happening, because hundreds of organized rioters, Senator Lee, are showing up where our ICE officers are. And as you know, they have fireworks, they have gas masks. You know, they don't want our officers to be protected with their identity, yet they're wearing gas masks, they're wearing goggles. And they're
So it's okay
ramming
for them to
cars.
be safe. It's okay for Antifa to be safe. It's okay for those doing the bidding of international violent drug cartels to be safe. But heaven forbid, our ICE officers should be safe.
Thank you, Senator Lee.
Time has expired. Senator Coons, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn, and thank you to the committee for holding this oversight hearing. And Attorney General Bondi, thank you for your service and for being with us. I want to start with an area where I think we have a lot to agree on. In May, your Bureau of Prisons issued a directive to expand the availability of home confinement. The directive said it was rooted in the principle of smart, fair criminal justice reform, and explained that smart reform and public safety can go hand in hand, and that second chances are not just possible, they're necessary for a justice system worthy of the American people. There's more to do to implement this directive, but I appreciated the BOP's recognition of these principles. Could you briefly speak further about the work BOP Director Marshall and Deputy Director Smith, himself a former inmate, are doing with regard to reform, and what opportunities you see for us to do more?
Thank you, Senator Coons. And you have been a champion of that, and we believe in second chances. As a career prosecutor, I know that most people, even violent criminals, are going to be locked up and then they're going to be released. And that's why we need everyone to be a productive member of society. I believe in halfway houses, and that's part of what the First Step Act did. It gives people a second chance at life. And that's what Billy Marshall and Josh Smith have been doing, working hand in hand at the Bureau of Prisons. I talk to them constantly, and they are working so hard. In fact, they inherited a dysfunctional and neglected agency, and they are taking, despite more than $450 million being appropriated between 2019 and 2024, we found that funds had been diverted away from the Department of the Prisons, the Bureau of Prisons. And so they are doing everything to create more halfway houses and to give inmates everything they need to be successful upon release, but also by keeping America safe. And I just learned from Billy Marshall, we just made an incredible case that someone, I believe the case was in Texas, one of our federal prisons, no one was monitoring this. And there was someone who was caught with a drone dropping off recently cell phones,
Yep.
paraphernalia,
Let me follow up on that point, if I might.
many
Attorney General.
things that could cause violence within our prisons and allow criminal cartel networks to function within our federal prisons. And that's what a lot of this money is going for, to make our prisons safe within, and so these criminals cannot function while they are in prison. But one good thing I can also add is we have given inmates, I think we've over doubled the amount of minutes they can have on their phones so they can talk to their family members, because we believe that is important.
One of the challenges federal probation officers face is massive caseloads. And I am about to introduce, hopefully reintroduce soon, a bill with Senator Lee that would improve our federal supervised release system by focusing resources on those who really need to be supervised and providing incentives to reduce oversight of those who've really made progress and who've changed the direction of their lives. It is broadly supported by law enforcement and a variety of policy groups. And I'd love to work with you on that, Madam Attorney General.
Yeah, Senator, can I just add, because I just got the numbers. So what we have is $8.7 billion for the Bureau of Prisons. And what that does is it adds 587 correctional officers to help with the things that we just discussed. 95 million for new hires. We have to recruit and we have to retain. We know that's a really tough job to be a corrections officer. And that's why Josh Smith is such a valuable part of that team with Billy Marshall. And I would welcome working with you on that. And President Trump is the one who signed the First Step Act because he believes in second chances. We all do. Thank you, Senator Coons, for that question.
One of the things I have been concerned, even upset about, is how early in this administration, at the behest of DOJ, the department cut hundreds of grants totaling hundreds of millions of dollars, many of which serve critical public safety needs, supporting victims, assisting with reentry, violence prevention, including in my own home state. This was literally defunding the police. And I have some concerns about how DOJ is putting at risk public safety by assigning thousands of agents and prosecutors away from drugs, firearms, corruption, violent crime to help ICE arrest people without criminal records. You've indicated a willingness to review any grant that a member of Congress has concerns about, and noted a number of them have been restored on appeal. And I appreciate that willingness to admit some misjudgments or mistakes in some of the many grants that were canceled. But can you assure us this process is going to be fixed going forward so better decisions are made at the start and not just after appeals? And can you assure us that we are not leaving doors wide open for crime and criminality in our communities and over-focusing on arrest and deportation of those without criminal records?
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. And as I said earlier, we are reviewing all the grants, and I believe we have, turned some back on for senators who have called. It doesn't matter what state you're from. If it's a law enforcement grant, if it's protecting victims, let us know and we will work with you. And I'm not sure if we have done any in your state yet, but I would be happy to work with you on that. What I can tell you is there have been, out of the 5,800 discretionary grants that were reviewed, only 376 around the country, 7% were terminated. 225 of the grant recipients have appealed that termination. And so far, we've turned back on 18 of those. 17 appeals have been denied, and the rest are being actively reviewed. If any of you know of any of those that you believe should be turned back on, call me. We don't want to jeopardize
I will be
anything
calling
that's
you.
hurting. Please do. And Senator, to go to what you said about the FBI and my federal agencies and being pulled to work on immigration cases, they're working hand in hand because we believe that, we have ICE officers out there, as we just discussed. I don't want to repeat that, who are being harmed. We're going to work with them. And I've directed all of my law enforcement agencies to work with ICE to make sure they're safe in Chicago, to make sure they're safe in Memphis, to make sure they're safe right here in Washington, D.C., but also at President Trump's direction. We are not stopping the core function of what we're doing, and that is fighting violent crime. And I think Director Patel made that very clear with all of the arrests that our FBI have been making on violent criminals. And, there's so much that we can't talk about here, but if any of you are on the Intel Committee, we are fighting terrorists around this country every single day. Our lawyers are shut down right now. They're not getting paid, but crime is not stopping. They are working around the clock to not only keep our country safe, Senator, but to keep our world safe. And they will
Madam Attorney
continue
General,
to do that.
I think all of us hate that there's a shutdown and its impact on the federal workforce, and are working to find a way out of this shutdown, but one that will also restore cuts to healthcare. We could spend a lot of time on that, but let's focus on, if I could, two more questions related to your service as the Attorney General. The government's asserting the authority to summarily kill people. It says our cartel members through military strikes against boats on the open ocean in the Caribbean. Congress has never authorized such a use of military force. And it's unclear to me how the administration has concluded that these strikes are legal. I'm concerned with what the limiting principle is, whether the government could summarily kill people. It just declares our cartel members as well as unlawful combatants inside the United States, or if they were American citizens. This isn't about defending cartels, and these aren't hypothetical questions. President Trump assembled military leaders and said they would be needed to fight the enemy from within and to train in cities in the United States that he describes as chaotic and violent. Do inside the United States, or if they were American citizens. This isn't about defending cartels, and these aren't hypothetical questions. President Trump assembled military leaders and said they would be needed to fight the enemy from within and to train in cities in the United States that he describes as chaotic and violent. Due process is the cornerstone of our Constitution. I'm deeply concerned about the authority our president seems to be asserting to summarily kill people suspected of criminal activity outside the law. As the chief lawyer for our federal government, you have a unique responsibility to ensure maintenance of our constitutional standards. How did you conclude that these strikes on ships or boats in the open ocean are legal?
Senator Coons, I'm not going to discuss any legal advice that my department may or may not have given or issued at the direction of the president on this matter. Regarding Venezuela, what I can tell you is Maduro is a narco-terrorist, and I announced $50 million reward for his capture to bring him to this country to face charges. He is currently under indictment in our country. Drugs coming from Venezuela are killing our children at record levels.
And
They have
members
been
of this
flowing
committee are
into
as
this
passionate
country.
as you at protecting our families and our communities from fentanyl. But we also need to protect our sailors on the high seas who are conducting freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea from just an abject violation of international norms and standards about how we interdict ships on the high seas. We can push back on fentanyl and drug trafficking. Many of my colleagues have done so as former U.S. attorneys or prosecutors or attorneys general, but we have to do it in a way that is in keeping with the core values of our Constitution. My colleagues have pressed you on a number of recent actions, particularly in the Eastern District of Virginia. My colleague, Senator Klobuchar, did. And I just wanted to add my voice to those who have expressed real alarm at how in your confirmation hearing, you said you would be leading a department that would look forward, yet public statements by President Trump urging you to go after and to indict and to prosecute specific named people seem to have led to dramatic and sudden action by the department. I am gravely concerned about what is no longer a hypothetical question, which you refused to answer in your confirmation hearing, but is a real question about when or if the president demands you prosecute individuals because he views them as opponents or enemies, what you will do and what your limiting standard is, because the recent episode around the indictment of James Comer left me very concerned about the direction of the department.
We're a minute and a half over, Senator Chairman. May I answer?
Yes.
Senator Coons, as you have stated in the past, no one is above the law.
Mhm.
And James Comer is a pending case right now. It's a pending indictment. He was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the country, by our U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, right here in Virginia. And it's a pending case, so I'm not going to discuss the facts of a pending case.
But you can understand the
Before-
alarm about the circumstances of the indictment immediately following President Trump
Your time-
demanding that you take action to
your
indict
time
and
is up.
prosecute that specific individual. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before Hawley, I'd, without objection, introduce two documents into the record. First one is the expanded scope of Arctic frost. The second document is a list of Republican groups and people that Arctic frost targeted, including Charlie Kirk's group, Turning Point USA. These documents show the political weaponization of the Biden administration against Republicans. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, good to see you. Welcome. I've been listening closely in this hearing, and I've heard over and over from my Democrat colleagues concerns about targeting political enemies, and they've accused you of all manner of things and the current president. I've also heard them said, and I just wrote it down because I wanted to be sure I heard it correctly. I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. Huh, that's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Let's look at it. We've got a list. Tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators. Gee, it sure looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concern whatsoever. We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for a Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. You've seen this document, Attorney General Bondi. Well, what was going on here? Who ordered this? Who ordered the tapping of the phones of United States senators?
Senator Hawley, I cannot discuss the details of that right now for very good reason.
You're going to do a thorough investigation into this, I trust. Is that correct?
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about
And
this.
you're going to figure out who was involved in this, who signed off on it, who knew about it. You're going to get to the bottom of all of it. Is it correct?
Yes, and I've spoken to Director Patel about it, and he is committed to doing this.
Well, I can tell you, we already know many of the details. We already know that this was ordered by the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, who reported directly to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. And we know that Jack Smith was on his witch hunt because he was directed to do so by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Let's just remember, let's take a walk down memory lane. April 2nd, 2022, the New York Times. Garland faces growing pressure. The Times says as recently as late last year, that would have been 2021, Mr. Biden confided to his inner circle he believed former President Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. It goes on to say that the Biden was frustrated with Garland and wanted him to take decisive action against Trump. Here's what we're talking about. Trump, of course, was a private citizen at the time. So he appoints his own hitman, Jack Smith, who goes after the president, former president, who goes after members of this body. You know, the thing about it, though, that really strikes me is that it didn't stop with members of the United States Senate. Did it, Attorney General Bondi? It didn't stop here at all. I mean, just as egregious, maybe more so than tapping the phones of U.S. senators, is this memo that I know you've seen before. Let's just look at it again. This is an FBI memo from the same time period, I might add, from the same time period, in which the Federal Bureau of Investigation attempts to recruit informants into Catholic parishes in this country. So here you have an administration that is activating the FBI against its political opponents and tapping the phones of United States senators. Can I just say that again for my colleagues, for the benefit of my colleagues on the other side of the dais? Tapping the phones of United States senators. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't maybe what will you do in the future. This isn't, oh, gee, can you imagine a situation? This happened. This happened. And this happened. The targeting of Catholics in this country because Joe Biden and his FBI didn't like Catholics who went to a certain kind of mass. I mean, good God in heaven, what is happening to this country? What happened under Joe Biden? Or then how about this? The infamous school board memo, where Merrick Garland, at the direction of the White House, issued a memo activating the FBI's counterterrorism division against parents who attended school board meetings and had the temerity to ask what their kids were being taught. And some of those parents were treated like this. Let's just remember. Let's remember how parents were treated. Treated like this man. A parent at a school board meeting, I think in Virginia, who was drug out of the school board meeting. He's bloodied there. You can see it. And what was the response of Joe Biden's DOJ and FBI? It was to issue a memorandum saying that people like this ought to be investigated by the counterterrorism unit. And unbelievably, they were. They were. Or how about this? Let's remember Mark Houck and the pro-lifers who were prosecuted for what? for going to a clinic, an abortion clinic, and praying on a sidewalk outside the abortion clinic. This is Mark Houck and his beautiful family at Mass. This man, at the direction of Joe Biden's FBI, this man had an FBI SWAT team come to his door in the early morning hours with his beautiful children there, terrorizing them with weapons drawn. He was then arrested and prosecuted. Unfortunately, a jury acquitted him. This is what was happening under Joe Biden. United States senators spied upon, former presidents, the political opponents of the president at the time, targeted, prosecuted. Pro-lifers, targeted, prosecuted. Catholics, targeted, prosecuted. 92 conservative organizations put under surveillance, targeted for potential prosecution. Gee, I don't know. Would you call that an example of weaponization, Attorney General Bondi? Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Senator Hawley, that is the ultimate weaponization, and weaponization under Donald Trump has ended. It has ended. Harmeet Dillon is running our civil rights unit, and she is doing an incredible job. No longer will parents be targeted. No longer will parents who care about whether their elementary school children have to read a transgender book be targeted and told they cannot have any say in their child's education. That has ended under this administration. People can worship freely, whether they're Catholics at synagogues or Muslims. Everyone can worship freely. That was the ultimate weaponization. They were targeting Catholics. No longer. They have been targeting so many American citizens throughout this country. And Senator Hawley, you have been a champion of this, and thank you for being a champion of that. But under Donald Trump's watch, it has ended.
You know, I think about some of the abuses of power in this country's history, and there's been sadly a lot of them by members of the executive branch over the years, whether it's Watergate, whether it's what J. Edgar Hoover did in his time at the FBI, spying on many public figures, RFK, MLK, JFK, you name it. And I just have to say, what we now know happened in the last 4 years under this administration surpasses all of that. It surpasses all of it, not just for the interference in the legislative branch, not just for the blatant disregard for the separation of powers, not just for the blatant disregard for the First Amendment, but for the targeting of ordinary American citizens who can't afford lawyers, who can't afford to mount a defense, who when the FBI knocks at their door or comes with the SWAT team, they don't know what to do. It is absolutely a disgrace. It is a stain on the history of this country and on the conscience of this country, what this administration did in the last 4 years. So here's what I think needs to happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly who approved the wiretaps on United States senators, who knew about it, what agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI. I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo, who was involved with it, how far did it go. I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know that, Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to do oversight hearings. We need to have thorough hearings into what has happened these last 4 years and this abuse that has now just been uncovered, because we have to ensure that it stops. As you just said, Attorney General Bondi, we have to ensure that it stops. This chapter in American history needs to come to a close, never to be opened again. The use of the most powerful law enforcement bodies in the world against ordinary citizens and political opponents must end once and for all. And we have a chance to do it, and it needs to be done with a thorough investigation, full transparency, and those who violated laws need to be prosecuted. I thank you for what you're doing, Attorney General Bondi. I hope that you will launch a thorough investigation. I hope you'll appoint a special prosecutor. Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll hold hearings. And with that, I yield.
Yeah. Before I call on Blumenthal, I want to, without objection, introduce into the record a document that General Bondi helped to declassify. The document is array FBI analysis of Nellie Orr's false statements to Congress or never suffered consequences for advancing this phony Trump a Russian narrative and attempting to cover up her involvement in the hoax with false statements. Yet time and again, the American justice system has been weaponized against President Trump and his associates. And I've already talked about Peter Navarro in regard to that. The DOJ's inaction on Nellie Orr's criminal referral, despite the obvious incriminating evidence provided in the FBI's own analysis, undermines public trust of the rule of law thanks to Director Wray's utter failure. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history. Tragically and chillingly, you may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague, Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay now. 5 days before you indicted, or grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
Did you see
States.
that
You're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
when you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you are unwilling to tell this
pending
committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I may
regarding James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me show
continue,
you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group. Was
Actually, there
James
were a lot of
Comey
people there that
discussed-
night. That's a great
Was James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the
Well-
entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down. Yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm gonna take
conversations
that
I've
as a
had or
yes,
not have with the
Because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General,
The entire
whether
cabinet was
you
at that dinner.
took
too, Senator.
instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Oh,
You
wait,
know,
wait, wait.
I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I propose legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions, and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be
Information.
positive.
If I can finish
and
answering the
constructive,
question, I'm not
Madam
going to
Attorney
yell
General.
over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine.
Let
And
me-
I'm not going
let
to be
me-
lectured
let
to
me
you
move to
about
another
integrity
topic,
by
and I'm hoping that
someone
you will review
who
these
lied about
legislative
being in the military just
and
to be
support
elected
them.
a senator.
The merger between Hewlett Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As
Well,
you should know
then
with a law
fired,
degree,
did you not
that all
choose-
mergers, if I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
If I
with
could finish,
apologies,
no, I'm
interrupt
answering
you
the question.
because my time is
No,
limited.
well then don't ask me a question.
Let me
So,
just ask you,
as
did
I
you,
said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
and Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly,
And moreover,
moreover.
2 of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving 2 home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of Americans. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
And let me ask you
boy, you
about
just listed,
particularly,
you just gave a
well,
list
let me just
of
finish.
many
I
mergers.
have a
Can
question
you
for
talk to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place.
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
Involving American Express, GBT. I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversations did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
You
not
lied.
asking
You
you,
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety. I'm
You
asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career prosecutor.
Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my
who
integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General and anything with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Senator Lee has asked for the chair.
Yeah, just wanted to note for the record, the Paramount merger that he referenced was not within the Department of Justice's ambit. That was at the FCC, not the Department of Justice. Attorney General Bondi would have had nothing to do with that. Thanks.
And that was why I asked Senator Lee. He didn't know that. He was reading off a script.
Before I call on Senator Kennedy, it's kind of laughable about my Democrats friends expressing fear and concern at the Justice Department's recent attempts at holding parties responsible for their actions. I can only ask, where have they been in the last few years? They had no problem watching the Biden administration and its White House use all of its might and power to attack Trump and associates. And now even Republican senators have been selected to have their telephone records made public, or not public, but well, I guess they're public now. But Biden weaponized our institutions and didn't hear a peep from the other side. Now every investigation and prosecution under this administration, people are going to be held accountable for their actions. Senator Kennedy, or
I want extra time, Mr. Chairman.
okay,
I mean, this is, enough is enough.
Cruz was next, but he wasn't here.
Senator Cruz was next.
Okay, Senator Cruz, if you're ready, go ahead.
Well, thank you, but I will welcome Senator Kennedy providing color commentary throughout my question.
I will be happy to. We ever finish this hearing this year.
And I'll point out Senator Kennedy has a new book about testing negative for stupid, so I hope I test negative for stupid. I hope I meet the threshold of
You
of
do
book
meet
time.
it, and I talk in the book about the tattoo of the Backstreet Boys on your back.
Look, I can't help that you don't want to reach young people. I think young people are the future, damn it, and I'll do whatever steps are
The
needed.
Backstreet Boys?
That would be on Vice President Vance's playlist, I heard, that got hacked.
General Bondi, welcome. I apologize for injecting you in the middle of Senator Kennedy's antics. We can't help him. Thank you for the job you're doing. You are doing a tremendous job keeping this country safe. And our families are safer because you are on that wall. Our families are safer because you are returning the Department of Justice to its core function, which is enforcing the law and locking up bad guys. We saw for 4 years under the Biden administration, we saw the Department of Justice politicized and weaponized, and we saw them refuse to do their core function. More than 12 million illegal aliens flooded into this country, and the Biden Justice Department seemed to think its job was letting murderers and gangbangers and rapists go. And the results in just a few months that you've been able to produce are tremendous. Arrests of violent criminals are up 125% since the Biden administration. Fentanyl trafficking prosecutions have risen 42% since fiscal year 2023. DOJ has coordinated with DHS to remove over 220,000 criminal illegal aliens this year alone. Under your leadership as Attorney General, you have helped rescue 4,000 children from predators and helped arrest 1,300 child predators and 285 human traffickers. In my home state of Texas, Operation Soteria Shield resulted in the rescue of 109 children. Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. Texans are safer because you are serving. Americans are safer because you are serving. You have a big task cleaning up the messes of the Biden DOJ. One of the most egregious failures of the Biden Justice Department was its refusal to protect judges and Supreme Court justices. As you know, in May of 2022, an unknown individual leaked to Politico the draft of the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the opinion that finally overturned Roe versus Wade. That leak was a crime. It was a theft of government property under 18 U.S.C. Section 641, and it was an unauthorized disclosure of confidential information under 18 U.S.C. Section 1905. General Bondi, do you agree that leaking that opinion was a criminal act?
Senator, I can't discuss anything regarding that matter. That should answer your question.
Well, I will say this. The leak occurred in 2022. So the 5-year statute of limitations has not expired. And I'm going to ask you, if it is not happening already, to direct the FBI to investigate and find the leaker. The leaker has not been exposed. The leaker has not been identified. And the FBI has far greater investigatory tools at its disposal than does the Marshal Service. And when it comes to defending the rule of law, when it comes to the integrity of our court system, having partisan law clerks, and I believe in all likelihood it is a law clerk who leaked it, leaking opinions designed to try to pressure the court politically is a gross subversion of the integrity of the court. And so I would ask you as Attorney General to direct the FBI to use every resource possible to investigate, to find the leaker, and when you identify the leaker, to prosecute the leaker for that criminal conduct.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
All right, I want to turn, secondly, after that decision was leaked. I believe the leak was part of a broader effort to intimidate and to threaten and harass justices into trying to get them to change their decision. And we saw mobs assemble outside the homes of multiple justices. Do you agree, General, that the mobs that came outside the homes of justices were there to intimidate the court and to try to influence the justice's decision?
100%.
Well, as you know, federal law, in particular 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, makes it a crime to picket or parade outside a judge's home, quote, with the intent of influencing that judge's decision. That statute is crystal clear. And I will point out, these protests happened in 2022. So just like the leak, the 5-year statute of limitations has not expired on these protests. But unfortunately, the Biden Department of Justice didn't give a damn about prosecuting this statute because President Biden and Merrick Garland and the political hacks at DOJ disagreed with the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs and were perfectly fine turning a blind eye to violent protesters threatening the justices and their children. You may recall I questioned Attorney General Garland about this statute, and he admitted under oath that not a single protester had been prosecuted. And he blamed the Marshal Service. He said the problem was the marshals, quote, didn't make arrests. Well, subsequent documents told a different story. Internal training materials obtained reveals that the marshals were explicitly instructed not to arrest protesters under Section 1507. So the reason there was no arrest is because a political decision was made that we like what the protesters are protesting for, and we, the Department of Justice, are not going to protect the safety of justices. We're going to allow them to be victims of an intimidation and threatening campaign. Just as I asked you with regard to the Dobbs opinion, I would ask you to direct the FBI to review the footage of these protests, to review the evidence that exists in terms of who engaged in it. And will you commit that anyone who you can prove violated 18 U.S.C. Section 1507 will face consequences and face prosecution?
Senator, we currently have 63 ongoing investigations involving judges and officials throughout this country. That scene that you're showing will not happen under my watch. It will not happen under Donald Trump's presidency. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal judge or a conservative judge or justice. That will not happen.
Amen. And that point that General Bondi made is very important. I would be equally outraged if you had nuts in front of the liberal justices. I'd say arrest them and throw them in jail. Violence is unacceptable, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with your politics. And violence, particularly fueled by rhetoric by irresponsible politicians, violence can result. And tragically, it resulted in one deranged individual traveling from California to Maryland with the intention of murdering Justice Brett Kavanaugh. As you know well, this deranged individual was arrested outside the justice's house. He was arrested with a kill kit. He was arrested with a gun, with handcuffs, with duct tape, with zip ties, and with the intention of murdering Justice Kavanaugh, very possibly murdering Justice Kavanaugh's wife and two daughters, and potentially murdering two other Supreme Court justices.
Senator Ronald.
As you know, just this week, a left-wing Biden-appointed judge sentenced this attempted murderer, this attempted assassin, to just 8 years. The Department of Justice asked for 30 years.
That's right.
And that judge downward departed by 22 years. Why? Because this left-wing judge said that the attempted murderer was transgender. And because he identifies as transgender, apparently it's okay to try to kill a Supreme Court justice if your politics are sufficiently woke. Now, I know you have said the Department of Justice is going to appeal, and you absolutely should. I called this week, I believe this judge should be impeached because the judge has demonstrated she is completely unfit to be a federal judge. And what is your view of the justice of this sentence of just 8 years for the attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice?
I was speaking with our prosecutor, Ms. Mal, who did an incredible job on this case. She did an incredible job. And yet, this judge gave 8 years. And the judge also would not refer to the defendant by his biological name, referred to him by the pronouns, and was concerned about the treatment that this individual would get regarding a sex change while in prison. And we are appealing that sentence. I immediately said we are appealing that sentence.
Thank you.
But my prosecutors did an incredible job on that case.
And the judge wanted to put him in a women's prison.
Before Senator.
Not going to happen, excuse me, I'm sorry, Chairman. That's not going to happen in the Bureau of Prisons now.
Before Senator Ronald, without objection, I'd like to introduce 3 FBI 1023 forms into the record. The first 1023 form I made public last Congress. This is the one that Director Patel said his predecessors did fully investigate. The second and third 1023 forms relate to the first in that they reference potential Biden family criminal conduct. Senator Johnson and I made these 2 public, and we simply want to know whether the government has investigated what it found, and if not, why not? Senator Ronald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, FISA Section 702 will expire in 6 months. In response to my questions for the record, at your confirmation hearing, you said you did not have experience with FISA, but if confirmed, you would consult with experts at DOJ. Now you've had that opportunity. Do you support adding additional safeguards for searching Americans' communications in the 702 database?
Senators, Section 702 is a vital source of foreign intelligence and instrumental in keeping Americans safe. We also take individuals' rights of their individual rights of all Americans very seriously. And many statutory reforms to FISA have incorporate safeguards. They have to incorporate safeguards to protect our civil liberties. The Department of Justice looks forward to working with you to discuss anything regarding 702.
Appreciate
I believe
that.
my staff, and Senator, I also want to thank you for this hearing. Your staff met with my staff, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. We're going to be working on 702, so I appreciate the openness to further amending 702. At your confirmation hearing, you assured me that it is the Department of Justice's decision to determine what cases will be prosecuted. Last month, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was forced out. President Trump then posted the message behind me asking about prosecuting James Comer. You then appointed a new U.S. attorney who within days secured an indictment against James Comer. That social media post behind me saying, "What about Comer?" was directed to Pam. Are you the Pam that the president was referring to?
I'm sure I was.
So it's very clear to me that when the president posts something like that, that he considers the DOJ to be his law firm and you his lawyer. And in fact, very shortly after the post to you, Comer gets indicted. Last year, President Trump's new now border czar, Tom Homan, was videotaped taking a bag with $50,000 in cash from undercover FBI agents after suggesting he could help with government contracts. Sounds like a bribe. 2 weeks ago, DOJ officials reportedly shut down the bribery investigation into Mr. Homan. Ms. Bondi, did you approve closing the Homan investigation, bribery investigation?
Senator Hirono, as I stated earlier, the Department of Justice and the FBI conducted a thorough review, and they found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing. You were also on video outside the White House protesting with a group called CASA, where Antifa members were. Does that mean you're a member of Antifa?
You know, I simply asked the question as to whether or not you approve the shutting down of the investigation, Mr. Homan. I have to assume that you did because the FBI reports to you. But the American people would look at the situation where this person is taking a $50,000 in cash, no less, and you testified today that a thorough investigation was done. Now, I have to assume, I conclude that since no wrongdoing was determined, that in answer to Senator Whitehouse's question, he kept the money. He kept the money, and I hope that he put that on his tax returns as income. Next question. Over 1,200 rioters were convicted of charges related to January 6th. President Trump has since pardoned nearly all of them. As if that weren't enough, last month there were reports that a lawyer for the January 6th rioters met with senior DOJ officials about setting up a compensation fund like the one that Congress set up after 9/11 to compensate these rioters. Ms. Bondi, is anyone at DOJ considering setting up a compensation fund for January 6th rioters? Yes or no?
Senator, I have had no meetings or discussions about a fund.
So would you support such a fund? Would you okay such a fund?
Senator, you can send me the information on the fund and I'd be happy to look at it.
No, but do you think that's a good idea this is what I'm getting at. Because to actually set up a fund and to have people talking with your senior people at DOJ, political people, about creating a fund, and you won't let us know what you think about that, that's pretty unbelievable. On January 30th of this year, the Trump DOJ's Antitrust Division sued to block the merger of two tech companies. Then well-connected lobbyists met with your political deputies who overruled the career staff and approved the merger. So there's a settlement on that. And separately, DOJ sued Ticketmaster last year for monopolizing concert tickets and forcing consumers to pay outrageous fees. Ticketmaster has hired the exact same lobbyists who met with senior DOJ political people regarding the merger of the two tech companies. So my question is, Ms. Bondi, have lobbyists met with your political deputies about the Ticketmaster case?
Senator Hirono, as I stated earlier, I am not going to discuss anything that is ongoing. Gail Slater runs the antitrust
I would
office,
say
and
that
Gail Slater, if I can finish, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running my antitrust unit.
It's highly likely, Ms. Bondi, that the same lobbyists who met with your people basically got rid of the antitrust case.
Senator, I don't think a lot of people
I
like
would
that
say
you were
that
out
they're probably
protesting with
meeting you
Antifa.
right now. Next question. You have fired dozens of career prosecutors because they worked on cases involving President Trump or January 6 rioters. For example, one career federal prosecutor who secured over 100 convictions in Florida. He also spent time in DC prosecuting January 6 cases. He received an outstanding review only 2 days before you signed a memo firing him. The memo cited no reason for his firing. Are you firing career prosecutors solely because they worked on cases like January 6th that the president doesn't like?
Senator Hirono, I am not going to
Yes or
talk
no?
about personnel matters with you.
Well, we all know that hundreds of career prosecutors have left the DOJ, and literally hundreds were told. And
Yeah,
you know,
Senator,
you've
are you
lost. The
familiar with the one
DOJ
that threw a
has
sandwich
lost-
at an ICE officer? Are you a Homeland Security
Here
officer?
is the
Are you familiar
reason.
with the one who went out on her lunch break and was
Ms. Bondi,
making obscene
would
gestures?
you say that DOJ losing these career prosecutors and the thousands of hours of experience they have prosecuting criminals, that is not a reassuring situation?
Senator, many employees took the fork in the road and resigned. DOJ is hiring committed prosecutors who will actually come into the office and work and not work remotely
I
and
think we all
prosecute
know that-
violent criminals around the country and terrorists. And
When
I
you-
am very
When
proud
you
of
fire
the work all of our
prosecutors, I'm running out of time, so I think you should stop with your continuous interruptions, in my opinion. Mr. Chairman, I just want to close by saying that what was once the Department of Justice has become the Department of Revenge and Corruption. Rather than pursuing cases without fear or favor, this DOJ seeks to favor the president's friends and instill fear in his alleged enemies. If you're a friend of the president, this corrupt DOJ will bend over backwards to help you. Just like it dropped the bribery investigation of Tom Homan, like it's considering paying money to January 6 rioters, and like it has put antitrust enforcement decisions in the hands of well-connected lobbyists. But if you're on the wrong side of this president, you will face the wrath of DOJ, no matter what the facts, law, or justice support. James Comer is indicted days after the president's social media directive. Experienced career prosecutors are fired just because they were assigned to work on January 6 cases. Blue states are sued to get highly sensitive private voter data, whereas red states are left alone. The double standard is clear, and the American people are waking up to the corruption and favoritism and the lawlessness at the DOJ. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I respond, Chairman?
Yes.
May I
Yeah,
respond?
yes, you may respond. Then Senator Kennedy.
Thank you. The double standard is crystal clear, Senator Hirono, crystal clear, because you didn't complain for 4 years when President Trump was being targeted by Jack Smith, by the last Justice Department. But the American people spoke loud and clear when they overwhelmingly elected him. The two-tier system of justice is over.
Senator Kennedy.
Me?
Yes.
General, welcome. Let's suppose that I'm appointed special counsel at the Department of Justice. And I go to the telecommunication companies, the phone companies. Let's single out AT&T, and I say, look, I know you're busy, but I want to see a copy of the phone records of a sitting United States senator. They're not going to just give them to me, are they?
No, Senator, of course not.
In fact, they're probably going to ask me what planet I just parachuted in from, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
They're going to tell me to come back with a subpoena, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. What do I have to show in that subpoena to get those phone records of a sitting? Did I mention it was a sitting United States senator? I can't remember. What do I have to show to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator?
Yes, Senator, there were actually 8 sitting United States
Yeah, I
senator,
heard that.
and you would
Heard
have to
that.
have cause.
I'm sorry, what do I have to show?
You would have to have cause to get the
Good
subpoena.
cause or probable cause?
Probable cause.
Okay. Probable cause, or if it's a subpoena, deuces take them, good cause, to show what?
You would need good cause for a subpoena ducis tecum, and what you would have to show is that you believed a crime had been committed, or there was a possibility of a crime, or that could lead to other crimes. We
By the
frequently in criminal enterprises subpoena cell
By the
phones.
sitting United States senator.
Senator, they would have to have believed you were part of a criminal conspiracy, is my understanding.
Would a judge have to sign off on it? On the subpoena?
Yes, Senator. Well, for a subpoena ducis tecum, Jack Smith probably took it straight to the judge.
Now, the phone companies, particularly their general counsel, if they're worried about civil liability, even with a subpoena to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator. Did I mention it was a sitting United States senator?
Yes, Senator.
The general counsel for that phone company, let's say AT&T, they have the right to seek to quash that subpoena, don't they?
Phone companies frequently do that.
Yeah. And a smart general counsel for that phone company is going to call the sitting United States senator and say, would you like to weigh in on this? Would you like me to quash the subpoena? We're talking about invading someone's privacy here by a sitting United States senator. Could the general counsel for the phone company do that?
Well, Senator, if they believe that a crime could have been committed, they could not tip off the person who committed the crime. Again, I can't comment on details of this particular case.
I'm just asking you theoretically.
I've never seen you commit a crime, Senator
But
Kennedy.
let's suppose, okay, they didn't want to tip off the sitting United States senator. But the phone company and the general counsel for the phone company, or companies, if there were more than one involved, could say, you know, this is serious as an aneurysm. This is serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. This is a sitting United States senator. So general counsel would likely advise the CEO, well, you need to file a motion to quash. The telephone companies could have contested those subpoenas, could they not?
Hypothetically, yes, I can't talk about the facts of this
Understand.
particular
We're
case.
talking hypothetical.
Senator, subpoenas are issued all the time through phone companies working with the general counsel.
But they can
for
file a motion to
cause.
quash.
They could, yes,
Yeah.
in any case.
And if they should have filed a motion to quash, and a reasonable person would have filed a motion to quash, because this is a sitting United States senator, and they didn't file a motion to quash, they would incur civil liability, wouldn't they?
Senator, typically phone companies follow a subpoena from a United
I
States
know they do, but
attorney.
they don't have to.
They could challenge it, Senator.
Yeah. And if they don't challenge it, they better have a damn good reason. Right? Right?
Senator, I can't talk about the facts of this particular
This is just a
case.
hypothetical.
In general, hypothetically, Senator, maybe they didn't recognize any of the names of the 8 sitting United States senators.
Hypothetically.
That was a joke.
Or maybe they should have gone to Amazon and buy some testicles online. Instead of just saying, sure, I'll just show you the phone records of a sitting United States senator on the basis of an administrative subpoena. Now, do you have copies of the subpoena applications? For
Yes,
these
Senator,
8
Senator, I can't discuss anything regarding
You
this
can't
case
even
with
tell me if you have copies?
I can't discuss any of this.
All right,
with
when are
I'm
you
sorry.
going to, General, when are you going to be able to discuss it?
I can't discuss whether there is or is not a pending investigation,
I understand,
Senator.
but
This was
let's
just
assume
brought to light
if
by
there is a
Director
pending
Patel.
investigation, I don't want this to get swept under the rug, okay? Because I think you're going to get pushback from all quarters. I think the telecommunication companies are going to be all over you like a bad rash because they've got liability here for just turning over these records when they knew what was going on. I think some FBI agents may have some liability here. I think a special counsel might have some liability here. If I were your special counsel and you had appointed me and I wanted to get the records of a sitting United States senator, is that something you would expect me to tell you as Attorney General of the United States?
They better have.
Yeah.
And
Do we know in this instance of the 8 sitting United States senators if they told Attorney General Garland?
Senator, I just learned about this very recently, as did Director Patel, and we cannot discuss the details. I don't know many of the details.
Well, maybe we ought to get Attorney General Garland here. Do you know if the special counsel told FBI Director Wray? Is that something, let me put it another way. If I were your special counsel and you were the director of the FBI and I'm trying to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator, did I mention it was a sitting United States senator? Is that something that you would expect me to tell you as director of the FBI?
In general, I would believe the FBI would help execute the subpoenas.
Yeah.
To the
Okay, I
businesses.
want to switch to another subject in the 12 minutes that I have left, since everybody else got to go over. I've got to ask you about this, General. Secretary Howard Lutnick on October 1 gave an interview to the New York Post about Mr. Epstein. And he described Mr. Epstein as, quote, the greatest blackmailer ever, close quote. Have you reviewed that transcript of that interview?
I have not reviewed the transcript, but I saw the clip of it.
Okay. It appears that Secretary Lutnick was Mr. Epstein's next door neighbor. In fact, their townhomes shared a wall. And the reporter that was talking to Mr. Lutnick, she asked how other prominent men could have been associated with Epstein when Mr. Lutnick could immediately sense that he was a, quote, pervert. And then Secretary Lutnick said, or rather the reporter said, did they see it and ignore it? Do you remember that from the interview?
I do.
And Commerce Secretary Lutnick said, no, they participated. And then Commerce Secretary Lutnick goes on to say, quote, that's what his MO was. You know, get a massage, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume, was a video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever, blackmailed people. That's how he had money, end quote. Is that true?
Senator, as our July memo said, we did not uncover evidence. This case has gone through 3 administrations, as well as former U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta.
I know that, Pam, but have you interviewed Secretary Lutnick?
No, Senator.
Do you plan to?
If he wants to talk to the FBI or the FBI wants to talk to him, that is more than on.
Don't you think you ought to talk to him after this interview?
Senator, if Howard Lutnick wants to speak to the FBI and if Director Patel wants to speak to Howard Lutnick, absolutely.
Okay. Maybe we ought to get Mr. Lutnick in here too, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General, I know there's been a lot of talk about grants. I hate to bring you through this again, but it's really important to my state. New Jersey is one of the top 4 donor states in America, which means our taxpayers, Americans, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, millions of people send more money down here than we get back in relative to all the other states in the nation, except for 3 others. We've been talking a lot about different grants. I want to be very specific about Office of Justice Program grants. There were $35 million worth of grants that were approved in a bipartisan way in this committee, grants that invest in things that are really vital to the public safety of our community. I know, again, we are in a room full of people who want to see crime go down. Republicans and Democrats, law enforcement officers have spoken to the urgency of these programs which deal with school violence, which divert people into substance abuse and treatment and supportive services. Community violence intervention programs, again, bipartisan programs that this committee really worked hard on this. I've heard what you've said to others on the committee. I heard what you said to Patty Murray in an appropriations committee that members should reach out to you if they want those grants reinstated. I've written letters, but I am hoping that you and I can have a conversation. $35 million of frozen funding for public safety that the people of New Jersey, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents really invested in those resources, those programs, and those nonprofits who were expecting those grants often made outlays and are now really in a lurch. Can we talk about those grants and the restoration of them, please?
Yeah, and Senator Booker, I had stated earlier that yes, we did terminate grants. We have an appeal process. We have turned some back on. We are appealing. We are looking at some we have denied, some are still pending. I believe we have multiple appeals pending with New Jersey, and I would be happy to sit down with you and look at those appeals. I believe one is with the city of New Jersey. I know there are multiple ones pending, but of course, I would be happy to sit down with you or any senator or any House member and look at grants that have been terminated. I've been doing that, and I would welcome that.
But I will be the first one you sit down with, correct?
Absolutely. I'd love to sit down with you on that. I'll look at those tomorrow, Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. I want to move on.
But we have been restoring some grants.
I understand,
some have been denied, some have not.
At New Jersey, none have, and I really want to get to the bottom of that, and I'm hoping that we can reinstate some of those grants. The second thing I want to move on to is that earlier this year, the Department of Justice charged Newark Mayor Ras Baraka after he sought access to Delaney Hall Detention Center to conduct oversight. The charges on their face, to many of us, especially in New Jersey, were clearly baseless. Many people say they're politically motivated. And then the judge, the federal judge,
admonished the prosecutors for even bringing the case. This is the quote from the federal judge. Federal prosecutors serve a single paramount client, justice itself. Your role is not to secure convictions at all costs, nor to satisfy public clamor, nor to advance political agendas. The federal judge went on to call the charges embarrassing and a worrisome misstep. Mayor Baraka was arrested that day on the scene, and I know you understand this, to arrest a mayor of a major city on charges that were called by a federal judge embarrassing and a worrisome misstep is very concerning to me, and I think should be to the whole committee. A recently released video shows a federal agent telling fellow officers that the decision to arrest Baraka was, quote, per the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And I'm assuming that person is Todd Blanche. This is evidence to me that this decision wasn't made by people on the ground in the field, but by Maine Justice, that they were directing an arrest from DC on the scene. And it leads to the conclusion that this was a political decision, that the decision to arrest was not made by the people who were there on the spot. And I can assume that you can see how that's problematic to me. So I have questions not about the case, but really about how the decisions to arrest and charge Baraka and now MacIver, Congresswoman MacIver, were really made. Before this committee, I am saying that I'm going to submit these questions for the record, and I'm really hoping that we can understand how those decisions, as our oversight, how we're making decisions, especially for high-level officials in my state, the mayor of our largest city, the congressperson of that city, and I'm hoping that you can respond to those letters on the record.
Yeah, and Senator, that matter is ongoing, and so I can't discuss it. As an attorney, you realize I can't discuss an ongoing matter.
And I respect that. I guess I just want to know